What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to League Unlocked. My name is Eric, and you know we're aboard the Millennium Falcon today because I'm flying Han Solo as we are looking back and ranking the players today from the LCS in the summer split. You know, before the season starts, we always do our preseason player rankings, and we're going to adjust and adapt and remake some new ones based on how the summer split went. I know we still have the gauntlet to get through, so there are still some games to be played, and maybe there'll be a little bit of changes depending on how certain players or teams perform in the gauntlet. But quite frankly, we probably won't have time to do a player rankings after the gauntlet finishes because it'll all be about Worlds by then. So we got the playoffs behind us. We will do the rankings here for the summer split. And yeah, there are some serious changes with TSM struggling. That's the main one that kind of changed things up. But if we start in that top lane and go 10-1, also something to keep in mind is there's a lot of players we weren't expecting to play at all. Somebody like, I don't know, Fake God did not expect someday to get replaced or benched. As we know, he won the Academy League Finals. He is a world champion here since he came to North America. But Fake God is in at number 10 he wasn't bad per se. He didn't really get many resources. He was just he was there to absorb pressure and not completely feed. And that wasn't the case. So we have him at 10, but I don't think he was actually that bad. Solo and Lorelo. Solo got benched, I think, because of some toxicity issues, which is something that's been around his career for a very long time. Dokla, we had him preseason at number 10. He actually surprised and climbed up a few spots, so kudos to him. His Aatrox, well, everyone's Aatrox these days is absolutely insane, but he did well there. And if we're looking towards the top half of this, top three, Impact was in at number 3 in the preseason rankings, and he's kind of been looked at as a weakness at times on Team Liquid, but I do not think that was the case whatsoever for him here in the summer split. He was on that All-Pro first team, I think deservedly so. He really stepped up for them, and he wasn't just playing tanks. He was playing some of these carry champions, which you kind of have to be able to do in this meta, as it has been all about the solo lanes for over a year now, basically, with all these insane flex picks, and he's been able to play most of them. He can still play the Gangplank. That was really the only carry champion he could play in Season 8, but he has definitely diversified his champion pool here, especially in the summer split. And you even saw, he still always has that Shen that he can bounce back on. It doesn't matter if they rework the champion. You saw him do it in Game 5 against Cloud9. He can always play that champion. He's got a world championship skin on it for a reason. As long as he's got the taunt, then he's still that same old Shen that we know and love. So Impact had a great split, comes in at number 1. The other top 3, Licorice, you knew would be in there. Huni had a fantastic bounce back season. He was great in the playoffs for them. And for Clutch Gaming, that is, he was way better in spring than he was in summer. Happy to see him slowly returning to that form that we know of SKT and Fnatic and Immortals Huni, pretty much anyone pre-Echo Fox. And he was even good on Echo Fox, but he's getting back to that mark. Viper's a guy who, with FlyQuest struggles, he's gone down a few spots, but that was just given. I think he still has the potential to be one of the best top laners in North America, and I think he was the best player on FlyQuest for the majority of the split, so not too upset about him going down there. Broken Blade, a few spots down again. Laning phase wasn't quite as good in the second half of summer, so he goes down a few spots. And Haunter, we know the solo laners, that's what the Golden Guardians are all about. That is where they absolutely thrive, and that is their main win condition, although wasn't enough of a win condition to get them into playoffs. So no huge surprises when it comes to all those top laners. And when we go to the junglers, we know that, number 1 is obvious who it's going to be because he got MVP of the entire split. We knew that he was probably going to be good coming into this one. We had him top 3 before the split even started, but Svenskeren even outperformed what we were anticipating. No question, he comes in at number 1. And obviously, the most interesting thing on this entire list, you see there we have Grikadica, which is a superhero that is a combination of Greg Acadian and Spica, the three junglers that TSM used. And when you include those three there are 6 former or current TSM junglers on this list when you throw in Santorin Amazing and Svenskeren. That is absolutely insane. How many of these guys have at one time played on TSM? I know it's something we've kind of beaten to death talking about, but it is insane. And the tandem or trio of the TSM junglers is in at number 8. Mike Young in contracts, I think, were clearly the bottom 2 junglers throughout the majority of the summer split. Amazing. He may only be number 6 on our rankings, but he was one of the main reasons for the turnaround here for 100 Thieves in the summer split. I'm really excited to see him grow and develop with this squad. I think he'll be cracking top 5 when 2020 does roll around. Lyra's another guy who had an awesome bounce back performance this summer alongside Huni. We were concerned about those two as a duo, but they definitely bounced back. Lyra, he's not at Envy Lyra form yet, but he's definitely better than he has been in the last year and a half on Clutch. And Meteos is a guy alongside Crown who were clearly the 2 best players on Optic this split. We on this show criticized for never putting Dardoch in over Optic when they signed him, or over Meteos, excuse me. But Meteos has been great, and I hope he stays on this roster. You know he's going to be somewhere in the LCS. Wiggly's a guy who made it into the top 3, which is a huge climb from him. We had him number 9 in the preseason because in spring he was not very good. CLG was not very good, but the growth that this guy has shown in less than a year, really, on the big stage in the LCS has been incredible. CLG, I mean, there's a lot of things you can account for why they had such a vast improvement, why they became a top 4 team here in the summer split. Wiggly's improvement is obviously a huge factor for it, as well as obviously Stixxay and Bio being more consistent, and Ruin coming in that top lane for them, who's a guy we didn't even talk about in the top lane list. We could have had Ruin higher, by the way, but it was just, it's the effect of him dying too often, getting caught out too much. He kind of took over the main role of Huni for being an incredible player, but still getting caught out just a little bit too often for him to be higher on that list. But him and Wiggly, that top side of the map for CLG, had huge improvements, and I think that is the biggest reason why they improved here in summer split. That combined with Biofrost really stepping and finding footing in that leadership role and shot caller role, which he has now thrived in, which was his main weakness apparently on TSM. So he learned from getting kicked and has definitely improved as well as Ruin and Wiggly. So CLG, top 4. We're excited to see them in the Gauntlet stage. Coming up after the break, we move to the mid laners, and we know North America, we're all about European mid laners over here, and it's just a new era of them. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is League Unlock. We're looking back at the player performances in the LCS for the summer split, and we know the mid lane is always the most exciting lane to talk about, especially in North America, because you have such diversity. You have so many different regions that are represented here in North America, and people from NA are, in the minority when it comes to who's actually suiting up and starting in that mid lane. We know that it has been Wilson's kingdom for so many years in North America, but this is the first time where we're talking about him outside of the top 3 when we look at these rankings, which I know is insane to even think about, especially in spring. We had him number 1 coming into this split because he had a great spring. I think he was still top 3 in MVP voting, and the start of this split, I think it exactly looked like that again. We were probably talking about him as that first team All-Pro, but the last 5 weeks of the split happened where TSM looked, how do I put it? Dreadful. They looked terrible, and I mean, Bjergsen did not look as good as we're accustomed to him being. He was not comfortable on champions that we've seen him play throughout his whole career, like the Twisted Fate is the one that stands out, excuse me. He did have some great carry performances that he put on, but that was earlier on in the split, and later on, things weren't really coming together. Nothing was working for TSM. I think him being passive has been the main criticism that he's had throughout his whole career. I think that was true as well. He was just kind of invisible in a lot of these games. But I mean, for 2020, I fully expect him to be back towards the top, and I expect him to be on 100 Thieves. Hopefully that rumor comes true, because that team would be absolutely insane. I'll just keep saying it, and eventually it will happen. The man who replaced Bjergsen in that top 3, one of them at least, is Crown from Optic, who was the front runner for MVP, hands down, for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the regular season. He finally did what no other mid laner could do. We're talking only about Power of Evil, but Crown is the man who finally got Optic into the playoffs. It was a long journey to get there. It took them their 4th and final split where they even existed in the LCS. But this guy, I know, he had a couple of games where he really didn't look good. He did not look good against CLG in the playoffs, but he carried Optic to get there. He's far and away their best player, and I mean, you look at this Optic roster and it just doesn't scream playoff team. And you know that Crown and Meteos put on just an absolute incredible run here in summer to get them there. Crown is clearly, this isn't Gen G Crown, as we've said before. This is Samsung Galaxy World Championship caliber Crown. Closer to that MVP level that he got in 2017 spring in the LCK, mind you. So he is clearly back, and it's just that NA for fun lifestyle. There's no pressure on him here to perform, because people weren't even expecting Optic to be a playoff team, and that's exactly where they ended up. So big shout outs there to Crown. He had a great split. Jensen takes that #1 spot, and I think a lot of that has to do with the playoff performance that he had in that head-to-head against Niski. I think the majority, or throughout the entirety of the whole split, though, you're definitely talking about Jensen and Niski as the top 2 mid laners, and I think those final couple of games were enough to just push Jensen over Niski. I know we had Niski as the first team All-Pro mid laner at the end of the regular season, but you know, when you go head-to-head in a best-of-5, Jensen leapfrogs over there. It's finally, he's not in Bjergsen's shadow anymore. I think he is the mid laner to beat in the LCS, because he is on the team to beat in Team Liquid. And not to undermine what Niski did here, I think you're talking almost a side grade for Jensen and for Cloud9. The change that they had was much better than I think most people were anticipating. So Niski has been great in Cloud9. It helps when you have the MVP of the league as your jungler. But overall, great from Niski. Froggen's a guy who I think there was a lot of question marks after spring, but he bounced back in summer. He's been great. He's right there, neck and neck with Bjergsen. They are very close, I think. They had very similar splits because they were both relied on pretty heavily. I would even argue Froggen had more carry performances and carry games than Bjergsen had. So shout-outs to Froggen. I hope he keeps playing for many, many more years. Damonte has passed over Pobelter as the main hope and faith for North American mid laners, because, I mean, you saw in some of these teaser videos, he's talking about, I'm going to take down Jensen after I took down Bjergsen, and that'll be my legacy. Well, that would be a pretty damn good legacy. He got close, oh so close to taking down Jensen. But Damonte, I mean, pretty much every player on Clutch, I think this split completely overperformed what you were anticipating, what we were anticipating for sure. So Damonte moves up a couple of spots into that top 6, into that playoff category, and I think he only has room to climb even more. But that being said, you look at the 5 people ahead of him on this list, it's pretty hard to climb past any of them, because they are obviously historically all-time greats, and with the exception of Niski, who maybe doesn't quite have the career there to be an all-time great yet. But if he keeps playing like he did in summer, then he will absolutely be putting his name in that category. Pobelter's a guy who fell off a little bit here in this split, and that's why he is down a few spots. Phoenix, I mean, Phoenix is Phoenix. Echo Fox was a bit of a disaster. So yeah, they're going to be near the bottom on the majority of these lists. But the main surprise here is to have Bjergsen out of the top 3. And I think if you put him in the top 3, you're only doing it because of legacy. You're only doing it because of splits past. If you're looking solely here at the summer split, I think Crown for sure, Niski, Jensen, they all had better splits than him, no doubt. And even Froggen, the argument can be made there that he had a better split than Bjergsen as well. So if this doesn't fire him up to come back even more in 2020. And again, we still have the gauntlet. Who knows? Maybe Bjergsen puts on some insane carry performances. They 3-0 in the grand finals of the gauntlet to get the Worlds. And maybe then you're talking about putting him a little bit higher. But for right now, he is outside of the top 3 mid laners in North America from the summer split. Coming up after the break, we go to the bottom lane, where it's basically who gave the best competition to Doublelift and Core JJ, because we all know that they're the very best. This is League Unlocked. We are back. My name's Eric, and you are the beautiful people watching as we look back at the summer split in the LCS. We're ranking 10-1 all the positions, and we're down now to that bottom lane, 80 carries and supports, where when 2019 started, we thought Bang and Afro were going to be the main competitors, the main competition for Doublelift and Core JJ. Well, it turns out absolutely nobody is their competition, and you know before any of these boards pop up, you know that Doublelift and Core JJ will both be number 1 because they are uncontested, clearly the best bottom lane in North America, and have been since they came together at the start of 2019. So really, the other 9 positions, it's just who stood up the best against them and who really stepped up. And there's a couple of names that, again, you weren't expecting to start any games, starting with FBI here on the Guardians. Deftly was out, got traded to Cloud9. FBI comes in, and him and Huhi were one of the main issues for the Golden Guardians, and that's why he's in at number 10, right behind Apollo, who is far removed from that spring split of Clutch, where we were talking about him and Hakuo being one of the most lane-dominant bottom lanes. Wild Turtle, he was top 4 coming into this one because FlyQuest was top 4. They were a great team, and Wild Turtle put on some great carry performances. A lot less of them here in the summer split. Maybe some of that has to do with splitting time between 2 different supports. I would have liked to have seen more JJ here this split. But the biggest surprise here on this list is obviously a guy who has a big NA by his name, but is in the top 2. We're talking Cody Sun. We were still expecting Piglet or Midlet to come in this split. It was Cody Sun who was getting the start here for Clutch, and immediately returned to Immortals and 100 Thieves form, where he's right up there. He's a top 380 carry. In fact, a top 2. That's why we have him number 2. We had him second team All-Pro. And I mean, in the playoffs, he only continued to put up solid performances against TSM. I mean, listen, Sven was the best performing member on TSM in that playoff series. Cody Sun was just better. He had a great series pretty much all 4 games, and then he even went toe-to-toe with Doublelift in that set against Team Liquid. Obviously, I would say Doublelift still outperformed him in that series, but Cody Sun, man, 3 different teams now he's played in the last couple of years. He's always making it to playoffs. He is a carry that you can rely on. It's just too bad that a couple of misplays throughout his career have completely become memes, and all of a sudden people don't think he's a good AD carry because he flashed into 3 people with the Tristana, or he rocket jumps in. Really just Tristana as a champion. Don't play that, Cody Sun, because there's just too many memes around that, and you do get a little bit too aggressive. But pretty much any other character we've seen him play, you saw those Kai'Sa ultis, you've seen him on Xayah. He's incredible. I'm just so happy that he got back on the LCS stage. It was criminal that he was playing in the Academy League. He deserves to be in the LCS. Clearly, I'm excited to see him get a run through the gauntlet here, and it might be the 3rd team that he qualifies to Worlds with. Hopefully, if Clutch get there, they actually play him on the world stage, because he is one of, if not the biggest reason why they will get there here through the gauntlet. The other players, Stixay and Biofrost, clearly stepped up for CLG. We've kind of talked about them a little bit already. Sven is a guy who's just outside of that top 3, and it's a 80 carries for whatever reason. The memes follow them around the hardest. He still had some solid performances for TSM the split, but he also had some incredibly bad performances, and we still have yet to see that OG Niels or even G2's Ven here in North America. I think it's kind of been one-off games where we've seen that, but you haven't seen it in the playoff series, that's for sure. We're still waiting for that. Might have to wait longer because he might be going back to EU in 2020, but he's still a top 480 carry. And in playoffs, I actually think he played better in that Clutch series than we saw in the regular season. Sneaky is in at number 6, and Sneaky is a guy who we just finished watching get completely dismantled by Doublelift and CoreJJ in that Cloud9 series. It's kind of amazing that it made it to 5 games with how badly and how dominant Team Liquid was in that bottom lane matchup specifically. So Sneaky's a guy who's outside of that top 5 here for the summer split. But I mean, this guy's been around for so long, and I think on the international stage he might be stepping up in a big way. I don't know if Cloud9 is going to bring Deftly as a sub. That seems a little bit crazy when they have Golden Glue and Blabber, but it might be Blabber and a Deftly or something that comes in as the sub. But Sneaky outside of the top 5 for right now. If we are talking about supports, the heroes that we always forget about. I think I say that every time we talk about support. So they're not so forgotten about when I say it literally every time. But the buddies in the bottom lane who make sure their AD carries are happy and not whining, because we all know I play AD carry as well. You like to whine about everything. You stole my CS. We got ganked. Why don't you engage? Why don't you protect me? These guys have to deal with it all, and they do a pretty damn good job. CoreJJ, as we already talked about, obviously is going to be number 1. This is kind of like, I like to compare to when Gorilla came over to Misfits. It was clear that Gorilla and CoreJJ, when we did preseason rankings, they're obviously going to be number 1. CoreJJ has never wavered from being that best support in North America. Gorilla also obviously had his share of issues when it came to Misfits, but CoreJJ has clearly been the best. He already got an MVP. Biofrost, we talked about him stepping up. I think he stepped up even more than Stixxay. That's why he's in at number 2. Zeyzal actually had an incredible playoff run for Cloud9. He had some suspect cases of getting caught out warding in the regular season, but he shored that up in playoffs, so deserving of that number 3 spot. Smoothie, I mean, the bottom lane for TSM was consistent. They weren't stomping lanes, but I think he still can be in that top 4 category. Vulcan is just another member of Clutch who surprised and overperformed. He's up a few spots from those preseason rankings, absolutely deservedly so. And I think he kind of gets forgotten about specifically on that Clutch roster because they have some big names in Cody Sun and Hooney, even Lyra and Demonte stepping up in big ways. But Vulcan was also great for them. Afromoo, I know there was the meme that we've got this guy should be fired. He should retire. Spam this fire to retire. Well, Afro, don't retire, man. He looked much better in summer. The synergy is getting much better with him and Bang. I think the language barrier was a large issue for them in that spring split specifically. He's stepped up. He's been much better. I think having Amazing on that roster has kind of helped share the leadership role with Afro. And I mean, this guy has been around for so long and been at the top of the support game in North America and internationally for so long that I think you had to give him a pass for that spring split. And I think he's going to get back towards the top, at least that top 5 category. I'm very excited for what 100 Thieves do here in the 2020 split with their roster and just some of the older players, how they bounce back. But that's it for looking at the player rankings here for the summer split in the LCS. We'll, of course, be doing more when the preseason rolls around for 2020, but we still got Worlds on the agenda. That's it today. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you next time.